All right, hey everyone, it's Wes again, here with a little garden update. I know everyone's been in isolation past few weeks, so I've been gardening whenever I have a chance to, even though the weather's been pretty sucky out. So we're just gonna walk through the garden one more time and show you what's been going on. I'm sure everyone who's been watching any of my videos knows that I've been planting a lot of leafy greens right outside our back door, so we can just step out and grab stuff to eat to use in the kitchen. So that's what we have here. Some of this, you see, some of this has been picked over. Some of this is a little out of season, so I'm starting to have to cut it down to avoid any pests getting to it and destroying anything else that's coming up or attracting pests. But as usual, I have red vein sorrel that's doing real well. I have about six of these plants scattered throughout the yard, and I tend to scatter my plants all throughout the yard to avoid pests getting to them, because sometimes if you just cluster all your plants together, then whatever their natural predators are, they find those plants and they just devastate them. But if you mix them in, which they call mix all your plants up, they kind of call it biodiversity, you confuse those predators because they have a harder time finding the plants that they like. That's why you see I have all my plants scattered about, mixed up, even though I might have 10 of one plant, but they're not all in one place. But we have a lot of leafy greens here. They're fast to grow, easy to take care of, especially lettuce varieties. They're really easy to take care of. They don't mind their roots being pretty wet for a long period of time, even though they still pretty much like well-drained soil. Have a bunch of different varieties of lettuce and leafy greens. Have cilantro back here. For anybody, like I said, who saw any of the previous videos, you can see the amount of growth some of these have had. Moving a little bit further over, like I said, we've got more red vein sorrel. We've got nasturtiums. The nasturtiums really like this spot right here. They're really taking over. I've actually been able to take some cuttings off of this plant and place a little bit further down the sidewalk, and hopefully that'll take, and I'll have some more plants. And hopefully if that one takes before the weather gets too hot, then I'll have another plant that I'll be able to take care of throughout the season. We've got German chamomile out here. We've got lavender. We've got borage right here. I just put this one in over the past month or so. Hopefully it'll take over. This one is actually a start that I found growing wild in the yard from last year's plant that died off. Dug it up, put it in a pot, and then once it got healthy enough, I put it in the ground right here. As usual, we got our Swiss chard. We've been eating a lot of this lately. We just cut it up, add it to salads, or cut it up and eat it by itself as a salad. It's pretty tasty and it's hardy. It lasts through the winter, through freezes, and even through the summer, through the high heat. So this is definitely a great investment. These two plants here have been here for about 2 seasons now, and we've been eating off of those pretty regularly. My wife comes out and snips a little bit off. Sometimes she sends me out here, and they've been doing great. These other ones right here have been put in the ground, I think since December time frame. I think I bought about 5 of them to try and fill up this area and get these plants growing, because we really like this plant. In the back here, I have some more sage. The story of this one was I had a plant from my old house I put in here, and what was it? Possums dug up part of the roots. It caught a disease and it died. So I put these in here, these sage plants in here, to replace that old plant. Down in here, we've got what they call mosh, or corn salad. It's actually another leafy green that you can eat. I found out about this plant from a guy on YouTube. It's called 1 Yard Revolution. It's another leafy green you can just pick and eat, wash and eat at any time. It's a nice flavor to your salads. Right here I wanted to show you and highlight this. This right here is stevia. I'm sure some of you have seen stevia in the stores. Maybe not in this form, but stevia is naturally sweet. I haven't washed this plant off, so I'm not gonna put this in my mouth right now, but I have at times gone out in the garden, washed off the plant, and just chewed on this while I'm out here working on the garden. It's a nice sweet taste, natural sweetness. You do want to take care to keep the plant out of the direct heat. It seems to do well in good heat, but not in direct sun for too long. I'm moving along. Over here behind me, I've got a bunch of my other herbs. I've got garlic chives, some more thyme, curly leaf parsley, comfrey. The comfrey, I use that one mostly for the compost, because what it has a really deep taproot, goes down, pulls up a lot of those minerals and nutrients from the ground, and so I take the leaves from that, dump that in the compost. That way I can return those nutrients and minerals back to the soil and into my garden when I'm using it. Then we have here, that's lamb's ear, or what do you want to call the plant version of toilet tissue. So everybody's out here hoarding toilet tissue. Just get you some lamb's ear if we really run out and things get dire, and use that to wipe your butt. It's like really nice and soft. You see, it looks like to me, I would call it kitten ear, because it's a really nice and soft leaf plant. They say Native Americans also used to use this as like a poultice to put it, or like a bandage to put it on wounds, to help heal cuts and lacerations. And we have here the rosemary, and then moving over from the rosemary, I just put this in here like maybe about 30 minutes to an hour ago. This is wonderberry. This wonderberry was actually in a pot over here in the corner where the chamomile is, but it had started getting a little root bound inside that pot, so I wanted to get it in a bigger pot, because I don't want to put it in the ground. If we ever move here, I don't want to have to try and deal with digging this plant out and moving it to another location. But we have the wonderberry here. It makes these nice little really small black berries that you can eat in jams or pies or what have you. This is the first season that I've really been able to have it growing berries. I just bought it last year. It's a really small plant. Now it's getting bigger. It's actually starting to produce fruit. I'm excited to see how that turns out. Moving on, I've got more leafy greens here. Got lettuce varieties and some French sorrel. That is actually a volunteer plant. I actually did not plant that in there, but I have a lot of volunteer French sorrel all over the yard. If you see that patch right over there, I actually had a packet of seeds that got wasted. I think these plants are from that packet of seeds that got wasted and blew all over the place. So now I have French sorrel growing, what we would normally call wild or volunteer over here, and then in some of my other pots around the yard. Down here we have mint. This mint is actually from my first garden location down here in Central Texas. I had a garden down in Kyle at my other house. As I was moving, I just dug up a clump of it, because I had a 4x8 bed full of nothing but mint, and dug up a clump of it, brought it down here, popped it in the ground. You always say you're not supposed to put mint in the ground, but so far I've managed to keep it contained just to this corner. Whenever I start seeing it pop up anywhere else, I dig it out but also I've had plants planted along and other barriers underneath the ground to keep it from being able to root its way through the rest of this bed. Have another fennel plant here. Fennel plant is great for, you can roast the bulbs. You can see the big huge white bulb back there. You can roast the bulbs. It's also great for pollinators and for natural predators. During this time of the year, you'll see the swallowtails, or at least the swallowtail larvae, crawling on your fennel. Then during the more warmer parts of the year, you'll see wasps all congregating around this plant. Last year I observed several times. I had the fennel close to some of my tomato plants, and I watched wasps fly into the fennel, and as they were flying around the garden and around the fennel, they would carry pest caterpillars off of my other plants. Speaking of pests, I did not do my due diligence with these collard greens. So as you can see right here, we've got cabbage worms all over this plant, both of these plants. I still may be able to save them if I come along with some neem, and I'm gonna mix that up here. But given the way the weather's been, it's not been too friendly for me being out here and really doing much in the garden. I've also kind of let some of this arugula go to seed, but I wanted to go to seed that way I can collect them up, use them here in the garden, or share them with other people who are gardening and have other things that I may want. And here's a victim of our previous winter. I'm glad it's coming back. This is another plant. This is called the root beer plant. I see we have several starts coming up. We also have plenty of roly-polies trying to decimate the leaves on my plants. But this root beer plant, what happens is if you take one of these leaves, right, and crush it, it smells just like root beer. And what they say that you can do with it, not only it looks nice in the garden, but you can also take the leaves, because they grow quite large, and you can either wrap meats in the leaves, and then when you cook it or grill that meat, then it imparts that root beer flavor into the meat. Back here in the corner, I have a Citronella plant. This is a plant I just propagated. I just took a cutting from a plant out front and put it over here. And I'm sure a lot of people are familiar that Citronella is good for keeping the mosquitoes away. So hopefully I can get this this cutting started, and I'll have a nice big Citronella plant over here in this corner. Have here my grapevine is coming back. Hopefully this year it'll actually be mature enough to produce some fruit. Fingers crossed. We'll see what happens from there. Moving on to the backyard. And this is looking a little worse for wear because, like I said, the weather has not been friendly to really being out much and taking care of things. But hey, we're all the time. We got the Chinese red to restart this. But if you're interested, let me know, and I'll get you some greens. Drop them off at your front door, and then you can cash at me, or we trade it for something else. Back here is just the fennel plant I was telling you about. This one's been in the ground here for this is I think the third season for this plant, and this is also the third season for this curly leaf parsley. And this is the other borage plant that I found actually growing wild back here in the corner from the plant that I had last season. So this one actually took to this spot very well. I'm excited to have some of the little blue flowers and to watch the pollinators and bees go back and forth to this plant. Some of you are familiar with the Jerusalem sage that I showed you in a previous garden update video. This one's now starting to bloom. If you want sage, I've got plenty. And it seems to be a wild berry plant peeking up through there. Probably blew in from, or got dropped in here from one of the birds, because we have a green belt right out back. So a bird or something probably dropped that in there, and it's snuck its way up in between underneath this plant. I'm probably gonna have to dig that out of there so it doesn't cause any problems, because I have other plants in here like the yarrow, have golden sage, have Cuban oregano, and I have thyme over here. Speaking of the thyme is an expectorant. I have several bundles of that. If anyone either wants to do a trade, if you want to do a trade, that's great. If you just want to buy it outright, I'm selling those for $5 a bundle. I don't do personals, meaning that I do not meet face to face given the situation, but I would be happy with dropping it off at a certain location. Then you can either Venmo, PayPal, or Zelle me the money. I will not take cash exchange. These are the rest of some of my leafy greens. This garden bed right here is about to be out of season, so most of this will get cut down once I finish harvesting off of all these plants. Most of this will get cut down, and I'll put something else in this bed. But we have the oregano in here. We had cilantro, spinach, Merlot lettuce, some more red vein sorrel, and then we also had another rosemary plant back in here, and another golden thyme over here in the corner. Moving along, like I said, we really love the Chinese red giant mustards. So I have these plants all over the yard. Also have this curly leaf lettuce. Some of these are wild growing, where I didn't actually plant the seeds, but I don't mind, because we eat plenty of that, and so I just let them grow, because I don't have anything else in that spot. I'd rather have something growing there than it be bare and growing weeds. I also have over here we have green onions. Here I bought a bunch of these and popped these in the ground. These are doing pretty well over here. And for some of you who may remember the cleaning my collards, where I took Dr. Bronner's Castile soap, diluted in a bottle, and sprayed it on some of my plants. These are the plants that were being affected. This little bunch right here, and then those over there in that big box. Those are the ones I sprayed during that video. You see, those are doing really great. These are probably too close together, but once some of these others grow out, I'll dig some of these out and put them in some of the other locations so they can grow. Moving a little bit further up in this bed, I don't really have much in here, but this is my version of square foot gardening up in here. I actually have these little grates here. I don't know if you can see that. I don't know if you can see these, but these are perfect, because these are basically 1 square foot, and for planting the seeds in there is just perfect, because I can just space out. I can determine how many plants I need and a square foot space, and then plug them in, make the holes. As you can see, it has a little grid there. Plug them in according to the grid. And for some of these spots, I just left this little grate in place. That way, if something starts coming up, because you see I do have some weeds coming up, something starts coming up that's not quite where it should be, then I know I should pluck that up. I have up front on either side of this main plant, I have I have green snap peas, sweet snap peas. In the middle, that's fava beans. And then on either side here, I have Kentucky bush beans on this plot and this plot. I have, what's this, New Zealand spinach in this spot right here. I actually have the tag I need to staple to this block here. And then these other spots here are actually empty. I haven't determined what I'm gonna place in those areas yet. I do have a wild growing tomato plant in there. I'll probably move it to the bed, to one of these beds back over here. Have the wild growing tomato, and I have some wild growing Malabar spinach. Once those get a little bit bigger and easier to move without killing them, I'm gonna dig those up and put them in a different bed or in a pot. This is the fig tree. Fig tree's coming back pretty strong. But speaking of the fig tree, there's the fig tree. If you see down here, you see these little shoots coming up from the ground here. This is basically a whole nother fig tree. And what I did during the winter is while they were bare, I cut one of those out because I wanted to see if I could get my technique right. As I cut one of those out, added some rooting hormone to the base of that cutting, and then put it in the pot. That plant is now growing. As you can see, we have that right here. So I'm really excited about that, about getting another fig tree growing here in the yard. It's great for yams. I mean, not for yams, for jams, or just eating them straight. A little bit further back, have some rhubarb here. I've never eaten rhubarb, just so everyone knows. But they say once you plant it, you always have food for life. So I figured, hey, why not plant this, see how it grows, and see how it tastes once we get it growing. If anything, I can use the leaves or whatever it produces in the compost, or I can give it to other people. Then we have my Mandarin tree. I've had this Mandarin tree, yikes, I think I've had this thing since 2014 when I first moved to Texas. I bought it at the Lowe's down in Kyle, Texas, and had it in my yard down there. Every year it produces maybe about a half dozen fruit. Hopefully this year it'll do a lot better. I've seen a lot more pollinators on this plant, and it seems to like this spot that it's in now. So like I always say, fingers crossed, we'll take good care of it and see where this goes. One of my other new experiments is this is a pawpaw tree. They say the pawpaw tree is one of the only tropical fruiting plants that is native to North America. They say the fruit is similar to that of a banana. So I ordered that from, let's see what the tag is. I don't remember if this tag has it on there. But this is a Collins Select pawpaw. I can't remember the exact the place I ordered it from. I actually got it in the mail. It was a bare root plant. If you have that question, just leave that question in the comments, and I'll look through my email on my records and see if I can find where I ordered it from and see if you can get one for yourself. Moving along, like I said, more Chinese red giant mustards. And then moving a little bit further back in this back corner, some of you are familiar with this. I've featured this pile in a couple different videos. This is where I've dumped a lot of my bulk composting material from the large amounts of coffee grounds and coffee chaff that I've gotten, horse manure, yard waste from last year. You see these little viney looking things. This from my Malabar spinach that I had growing last year. Cardboard from packages that we've gotten. What I do is I get those in, take all the plastic and tape and stuff like that off of it, and then I buried it out here. I recently dug this out and open, so have these mini windrows so all this can breathe and that it can continue to compost without going anaerobic. So hopefully one day we'll be able to use the compost that's being created back here in this area. Most recently, I know some of you watched the video where I took an old box spring and turned it into a garden bed. This is that bed, and these are the plants that I put in. See, those, they have kind of jumped up. They've been enjoying all this rain. And what I'm gonna do, well, my next step is to start running this cord from these supports, and then run a cord down to each plant to help support the plants as they grow. And like I said, I have, what was that? I had 6 different varieties of tomato, and then two tomatillo plants. What were they? These were all from HEB Organics. I had the Champions, was it Champion 2, Celebrities, Sweet 100s, of course the tomatillos, the Black Princes, and then the pineapples. I'm excited about those. My wife's really excited about those, so if I can get her excited about anything in the garden, then I'm happy, because she really likes tomatoes. So I'll probably be able to finally get her out here to just come and grab them herself. And of course my little roly-poly friends are tearing me up. And right here we have another cucumber variety. I honestly forget which variety this is. I have it written down somewhere, but just not outside. Moving along to our final bed, I have Malabar spinach growing in here, and then I have 2 different varieties of cucumber. What do we have here? We have what they call a cucumber, the straight 9. Oh, actually, this is actually a squash. Forgot I bought squash as well. So we have a cucumber, then we have the squash over here. And as always, you know, once I start harvesting this stuff, I'm more than willing to share with anybody, because you know there's only 4 of us here, and I'm sure this is going to start producing a lot more than 4 people can eat at any given time. So if you're interested, let me know. I'm more than willing to share or trade with people if you're interested. I know this has been a tough time for a lot of people. People having to stay home, but you know, getting outside, being in the garden, it's a good use for your time, because it's not only good physical activity, but you know, it also works your, you know, it's a comprehensive activity. You know, it works your mind, body, and your soul. I mentioned in some of my other videos that this is not only my hobby, this is also a kind of therapy. So if you're interested, I'm willing to help people once this crisis clears. I'm not coming close to anybody during this time of crisis, but afterwards, or if you just have questions, I'm ready and willing to help answer any questions that anyone has afterwards. You know, if you're in the Austin area, I'm more than willing to come and help you set up a garden. Because if you see how I have several of these gardens set up, I have these blocks on the corners. These blocks right here, they're called planter blocks. So far I've only been able to find them at Home Depot, but I used to get them at Home Depot for $2.50. You get 4 of these blocks, and then maybe you can go and grab some lumber, or you could grab recycle some wood from a pallet. I got pallets back there, bust down a pallet and use the wood. So you could literally have you a full operational garden less than 25, or you can get one of those wide flat pots, because they have these I forget what the names of these are, but these bowls like this, they have them in different sizes, because I have this size right here, and then they have these wider ones, and you can put a lot of plants in one of these pots. And these are all like wide flat bowls right here. You just go and get one of these, and then put your soil in there. They have good drainage, and all you have to worry about is feeding and watering the plant, and then harvesting off of it every now and then. Harvesting more often helps the plant grow. Also, harvesting certain parts of it keeps it from developing diseases. So it's too easy to be able to start you a garden, no matter what amount of space that you have. You could even use one of these with this is a cement mixing container. I think these are maybe $5 to $7, depending on what size you get. And then you can go and get you a bag of soil, or you can go to a place like Organics by Gosh, or one of the nursery or landscape places, and get it in bulk, which is usually a lot cheaper than getting it from a big box store. You know, you can get several of these, fill them up with soil, and if you're concerned about drainage, I actually have these plants soaking. Concerned about drainage, you can just drill a hole or poke a hole in the sides or in the bottom, and then you have a well-draining garden bed that's mobile. So if you're interested in doing that, there's a lot of ways you can do it. And what we're looking at down here in this container, these are Citronella starts. I just cut these off of my old plant, put rooting hormone on the ends, and then planted these in these pots. So I'm just waiting for these to take root, so I can either trade them or plant them in other spots around the yard. Then what we have right here are more of the Chinese red giant mustards. Like I said, I really like these. I took the seeds from last year's plant, and I planted them literally all over the place. And of course, you know, when you have really small seeds and you're moving around, some of them are going to waste. So I actually have some volunteer plants all over the yard. But you know, we've got the Chinese red giants. I've got tomato plants growing here, and most of these are from volunteers. These plants right here are actually, like I said, they're volunteers. I had a container full of what do you call them, worm castings. Open up my container of worm castings, and I had seedlings all over the container. So I salvaged all those plants from my worm casting container. And what we have here, even though we're in this crisis, I managed to, what I'm trying to work on is getting a plant exchange for my neighborhood. So I've been talking to people over next door, and what myself and one of my neighbors did is we agreed on trading some plants. So these are Egyptian walking onions. So what he did, he took a box with these onions, placed them out front of his house. So I pulled up late, about an hour later. I dropped off some Swiss chard and a seedling in exchange for these plants. So I was saying earlier, if you're interested in getting any of the plants that I'm growing out here, I'm willing to trade, and or you can send funds electronically, and I will just take, box up or package up whatever plant that you're interested in and drop it at your front door or whatever location that you need me to drop it at. Like I said, I'm not doing personals. But the great thing about these these Egyptian walking onions actually is you plant them once, and you don't have to worry about them again. They're just like the green onions I have back in the other corner, except for once these things get mature, these tips create like a flowering bulb, and then it gets so heavy that it falls over and then it roots into the ground. So with that in mind, you want to put these somewhere where they can be contained and they won't take over your entire garden bed if that's not what you want. The guy I got these from, he had his into an old dilapidated wheelbarrow. I'm thinking about putting these in this corner to try and further contain the this the onslaught of the mint back here. But for everybody who decided to tune in, I want to say thank you. Keep checking back for more updates. We're going to be doing a lot more of these, especially being that we're home almost 24/7. I've only been out of the house like once since this thing jumped off, and that was just to go do a curbside grocery pickup. I would advise everyone to start doing that. Find out which one of your grocery stores nearby is doing curbside pickup, and just remember to plan ahead on if you're actually going out and getting groceries. Plan at least a week ahead. That's what we've been having to do, is plan a week ahead for grocery pickups, and then doing it online and scheduling that, and then just going, pulling up, calling. And what they do, they open up your opposite end door away from the driver, load all your groceries in, and then you're off along your way. Just to be safe out here. Stay safe, do the 5, stay home, and save lives.